Greetings, dear ones. I'm KRYON of Magnetic Service. We sit in a very special place called a Hogan. The modern day meets the ancient day, and yet there is a message, something special. In this place you learn how the ancients lived. The indigenous of the valley depended upon the valley. They wanted for nothing except water. The valley fed them, clothed them, kept them warm, kept them cool. And this was a sufficiency. In this modern age today, that sufficiency is not needed like that. And yet what we teach is that the planet continues to supply what you need. The planet and spirit combined together is what we teach. And all of you will go home to something far more modern. And what you learn here is not what you're supposed to do. Or is it? We want to talk about abundance. If you ask the indigenous of the valley 300 years ago, are they abundant? And they would say yes. And they would say that Spirit, the planet, supplies everything they need, and they would be correct. And when you leave this place, can you say the same? There's an ancient story, and we've told it many times. Thousands of years ago, where the Israelites walked for 40 years in a circle. They grew nothing, they were on the move constantly, and they covered the same area year after year. And as the scriptures say, they were fed every day from the sky. They had an abundance, and if you ask them if they have an abundance, they would say, yes, for one day. And they were constantly looking at the next day. Dear ones, that's what you do today. Even though you are fed every day, there is an abundance, as defined, truly is what you need from day to day to exist. And even in the Western world, this is the way of it. If you're allied with the planet and with Spirit in a consciousness that is elevated, Spirit will supply for you the abundance you need every single day of your life. And it's beyond just what you eat and what the clothing is. The abundance comes in health. The abundance comes in peace over the things that might give you stress. There is an abundance. There is plenty for all. This is the story of the ancients. Extrapolate it to today. See if it can be something that you would take home to your modern places every day, to wake up and know that there is abundance from day to day. There are certain indigenous that storehouse, and they would storehouse perhaps in the kivas, and they would do it for those places and times where they needed it. There is that tendency in the West. But you don't storehouse when you need it. You storehouse it because you want to storehouse it. And you worry when your storehouse is empty. Dear ones, this is what we want to tell you. The abundance is clear, it's for all, and it's forever. Take what you learn here and see in the most simplest form, and take it home. Finally, I say this. If you could go back 300-400 years, and you could interview the indigenous who live in these beautiful places that they built without nails, you would see that they were happy. You would see that they were in line and in harmony with all that was around them. Yes, they had problems like any other human being. But, dear ones, they were happy because they were in alliance with the planet. That is an elevated consciousness. And that is what you're learning to take home with you today. And so it is. Greetings, dear ones. I'm KRYON of Magnetic Service. Again, we are outside, this time in the wind, sheltered by a beautiful alcove. We're reaching the end of the tour. This is a session that is private. It's private to the indigenous who are here, all of them, in respect of the traditions of the ancients. The traditions of the ancients would not speak of that which was the polarity of the afterlife. They believed in the layers of life. They believed in the afterlife. They believe in that which precedes it. The creation story is precious to them and sacred. And they don't speak of it openly, especially in a group like this. For the traditions would say it would tend to hasten their demise. And that is the reason they are not involved in this particular channel. Because I want to talk about this polarity. I want to add on to the channel of yesterday. A channel when we talked about the energy becoming more profound, duality being more profound. We talked about a situation where light is winning. In these years, directly after the shift, there is a battle of dark and light. And I want to discuss this with you. I want to tell you this, dear ones. You had a beautiful healing session. And you may have done things in that healing session that you hadn't done before, and you may have left the baggage behind, as we said. But as soon as you leave the group, as soon as you go to a place that is not reinforced by the numbers of light workers, like this is, right here where you sit, the battle begins. The dark and light battle is earthwide, but not as strong as it is personally. You really, truly are under attack. And the attack is through your own Akash. The darkness that is there, the things that you fear, the things that you hate, will tend to swell up and fight that, because the yin and the yang is built in. Yin and yang is built in. The duality that you've spoken of, that we have spoken of, that every single human has, is built in. And the fight is this. You will leave this place. And then it begins, and what begins is that battle which questions what you did, the validity, the reality. The Western training you had as you were growing up, perhaps, would get in the way of what you did or what you were taught. Your friends, they may say things. The ones you live with may say things. And it makes you question whether any of this was real. I want you to recognize that immediately as that part of you, which is the duality part, the dark part, that does not want you to have a higher consciousness, that is very happy if you would simply stay the same as you were. Survival sometimes is that which does not change. Many times change is then seen as dangerous because you don't really know what's ahead. And so there's always part of you, the dark part, that says don't move anything, don't change anything, everything's going to be just like it is. Yes, fear that which you've always feared because that's who you are. And that's the next thing I want to tell you, is you have a tendency to define yourself and say, this is who I am, this is who I've always been, this is what I'm afraid of, this is what I do. Here are my propensities for bad health. Here's what I'm going to catch. I want you to rewrite that now as part of the healing you had before. Because the dark side will take you into the depths of fear. And it'll start when you least expect it, in your dreams. It'll project itself when you don't expect it, into your voice, into that which you'll then start to verbalize as your fears around other people. And you'll start to forget that you're a being of light. Light will always, always win. If you have a dream which takes you there and you wake up in the middle of the night, I invite you to stand up, move around, walk a little bit, come back and reframe who you are. Do not let the residual of a bad dream take you to a place that then goes into the next day. Reframe it. Put your hand in the air if you wish to, and claim your magnificence and say, dark part of me, get in the back seat, because you're not driving anymore. And that's what it does. It drives your life. I don't have to tell you that, because some of you already know it. You've tried your best all your life, and yet somehow it always slips to where you don't want it to be. Let this be the explanation of why that happens, but in this new energy, what you do this time is going to work. Reframe, rewrite who you are. Claim it differently. I am so-and-so, your name goes here, and then paint the picture of who you are. A picture that is far different than that which you would have said maybe last year or the year before. And start with this: I belong here. I'm a worker in the light. Evil things get away from me, because everywhere I walk, the bubble of light that I am pushes away that which is inappropriate for my magnificence. That's the story. And what happens, dear ones, is how you reframe yourself and your enlightenment and the consciousness that you become literally is etched into your Akash, so that when you return, that's where you start. You don't have to relearn any of this. Can you imagine if you've had fears all your life? If you've been afraid of things, if you've suffered, if you clear this time around, your soul, next time around, will start where you left off. And that is different than before the shift. Before the shift, you were always put into a situation of relearning. But now the Akashic energy is starting to then evolve. And as it does, it creates something that is new. It's not the first time I've told you, but you need to hear it again. Whatever you do right now will be permanent. And when you come in again, you just continue. Not with fear. You continue with that which you left with, which is understanding, a reframing of who you are. Some of that is happening now. You see it with the young people who are starting to come in, and they're not necessarily going to that side where their parents would tell them to do. Be afraid of this. Here is your enemy. This is what happens when you do this. And they're rebelling because they know better. Because there's an Akashic rewrite in them. Some of you have seen it. They're actually forming their own groups to get away from the energy of the past. This is a new human. It's a new situation. Go from this place and understand you don't have to slip backwards into the old ways. Those who had a healing yesterday, you don't have to then have it like a bad drug that's going to wear off, or a Band-Aid that's going to come off. That is a linear thought from a human being. Instead, you're changing the very consciousness of your cells, rewriting who you are, stepping into a new kind of light. So the rest of your life is much better. But then, dear ones, as you are reborn into the planet, you represent a human who can do so much more than when you arrived here in the condition you were in the old energy. It's profound. Yes, there is a dark side of the planet, of you, of everything. That is the polarity. The ancients knew it, saw it. They have their traditions to stay away from it. They have their traditions to reframe their own tribes so they can be positive about life. What's your tradition? Why don't you write it right now? Reframing, rewriting, so that when you leave this place, you leave it with the energy you created, and it stays there. And so it is. Greetings, dear ones. I am KRYON of Magnetic Service. This is the 11th channel and the last one of the series. To many of you, it seems like a few moments ago when you gathered in this very place and there was a message given. Time does that. But I want to talk about something that should be obvious to many. And it's fascinating. The fascination is the oneness that occurs around the globe in the definitions of spirit, in the creation stories, in the appreciation, in the definitions of God. I told you before that the prophecy of the ages has come from the ancients and the tribes all over the world, the ones that never knew one another. And the reason for this, dear ones, is what I will call a global spiritual intuition. If it is true that there is a God and that God resides in you and in the planet and the Creator knows you, there would have to be a sameness, something that you discover, something that anthropologists would see, something that spiritualists would study and look for. It's everywhere. In the ancient Tibetan numerology, they have identified numbers and meanings of the numbers. Isn't it interesting to you that so far away in Tibet, something that is not known to the indigenous here, the number 4 would have been identified as that belonging to the earth. And that number 4 is the one which is so common to these, which today you call the Navajo. Not just common, but sacred. It's part of their creation story, part of their dances, part of the lyrics, all of these things. Do you think it's a fluke or perhaps a coincidence that the Tibetans identified it? And it's exactly what we teach. The 11th channel, what an accident. The 11 is the first master number. It's illumination, the beauty of completion, you might even say, the double 1. Dear ones, there is this connection everywhere. So why isn't it with you? And the answer is, it is with you. The awakening that you're experiencing show you are the ones you have discovered here and the ones I tell you about through channel. And the real awakening is that you're connected. You're not just connected with Gaia. You're connected with the truth. What is the truth of this day and the ones that preceded it? What can you say happened here? When you leave this place, I want you to remember these truths. But specifically, I want you to honor your intuition. For it's the same intuition that the ancients had in this very place that connected them with the planet. It's the same intuition of the medicine woman or the medicine man that helped them put together the plants, the berries, for the healing that would be accomplished. As I said before, they didn't have a trial and error laboratory. They were guided. That intuition belongs with you. And you carry it into the modern world in order to do the things you need to do to survive. What is the intuition telling you about what happens when you get home? Is it possible that you could carry home a compassion so that you leave worry where it belongs? In the dirt, perhaps. Let Gaia take it. That you would no longer be fearful of certain things because you have an intuition that guides you. It's the intuition that told the Tibetans about number 4 that is celebrated right here. It's the same intuition that gave the identical information about the precession of the equinoxes in the sky to everyone. Think about that for a moment. If it's good for them, it's going to be good for you. But that is the awakening, cognizing the fact that you have it also, that you're not apart from any of them. In fact, if you want to study what you call your Akashic record, perhaps this particular trip meant even something more for you than for others. Some of you will know of what I speak. If it's true, dear ones, that you are old souls, it means that you were the ancients. So the task is to reawaken what you've already experienced and what you know to be true and carry it into the modern world. The places where you live, the places you go, what you do. You looked upon certain personalities in this place, and perhaps you saw the joy and the wisdom. Sometimes these tours are so exciting for many, for they meet those and they want to just take them home. Why don't you take home the personality within you? The love, the compassion, the wisdom that you see. It's yours to do so. Your intuition is the same as theirs. And dear one, as an ancient, that intuition should be the same. That's the invitation as we part. We've said it over and over. There is no goodbye. Don't you find it interesting that in most of your languages you have goodbye, but in the ancient languages you don't? Most of the indigenous stay away from the word goodbye, and instead they have a greeting that means hello and goodbye together. And it's all over the planet. Maybe it's time that you collected one for yourself. Now, finally, you look upon one another and you know the truth. There will never be another group exactly like this one again, with the same personalities, And so that means it's a stamp, a template that lives in your Akash right now. But all of you have the same identical one. So I ask the question, are you connected enough to feel that this never ends? This never ends. You can picture one another for the rest of your lives. Whether we're here or not, whether we passed on or not, the youngest of you will feel all of us for the rest of your life. That's the way it's supposed to be. And that's the way it is right here in the valley. For those who pass over are still here. And in some way and in some form, that is the respect that they have, not just for the elders, but for the ones that the elders know passed over and are still in the valley. It's beautiful and elegant, isn't it? That is a light worker. Congratulations to those of you who made decisions in these days. May you take them and have them permanent. That is the plan. That is the plan. And so it is.